Wondrous Stories was one of the pieces that John played me when we first got back together again to do the Going for the One album.
Wondrous Stories was part of John's sort of, what I think of John's Renaissance sort of period, where he was quite liked a classical sort of feeling to things. More so than when we just interjected it with rock. It had a very classical framework.
It was a track, the only other track, in fact, that was a #1 single in England in the band's history.
And it came out as a single, really, because nobody could actually agree on what would be the single. And Atlantic Records actually were getting the right ump and said, oh, if you don't choose something soon, we'll choose something. And John and I were in Germany sitting in a car with our then manager, Brian Lane, and he said, look, somebody's got to make a decision. And the interesting thing was both John and my votes went for Wondrous Stories, and it was a split vote within the band. But we decided to make a decision there and then, and as there was only 2 members of the band there to make a vote, it was carried unanimously 2-0. Chris arrived at rehearsals, and he was just literally with a guitar. And he was playing Don't Kill the Whale, and we hadn't planned to do it at all. And we just all sort of joined in and started playing it, which is an unusual situation for us. You normally sort of work a few things out before. And it was one of those rare Yes pieces of music that had a start and a finish, and we didn't really do very much to it at all. I think all of us had an affinity to the track simply because of the whale, and because we all, way before it became sort of in vogue to care about the environment and animals and people and life in general, Yes actually cared, a lot about it. So in a strange way, it was our way of trying to say our piece before it was, the current vogue and the current trend. It's a good track, it's a good song. I mean, Fishy writes some good songs. Madrigal stems from a man called Thomas Goff, would you believe? Thomas Goff was the greatest harpsichord manufacturer the world has ever known. Don't let anybody tell you any different. He was a remarkable character, related in fact to royalties. He related to our present Queen Mother of the UK. I had the great privilege of knowing Thomas Goff. Sadly, he died a few years back. I was one of the few privileged people to be allowed to use his harpsichords. I met him when I was at the Royal College of Music. And I introduced the harpsichord, in fact, on the Fragile album, and it was used I beg your pardon, I'll correct that. I introduced it on the Close to the Edge album, and it was used on the Siberian Khatru and a couple of other pieces and bits and pieces on Close to the Edge itself. John, who's a great lover of real instruments, fell instantly in love with this, because there's harpsichords and there's harpsichord, and Thomas Goff harpsichords are unique. And really it stand about that when the opportunity came much later on in the 70s to write Madrigal, we had to do it on a wonderful dear old Thomas Goff harpsichord. So it really all stems from that instrument manufacturer. That's how Madrigal came about.
Tempest Future was a song that was conceived by Steve, Chris and myself while rehearsing together just prior to meeting the Buggles.
The title of that, Time Flies, is it? Tempest Future? Time Flies. Was a bit of a send-up on Chris, because he has a lot of trouble getting places on time. And it's got that section in it, Yes, Yes, which is a sort of a pastiche we did of some of the Yes ideas.
It's slightly punky, strangely enough. But it was like 1970, I guess 79 we did it. It was kind of definitely in the spirit of the time.
Into the Lands was written by mainly Trevor Horn, and conceived at a period of time when he joined Yes for the first time, and was a successful single for the band.
It doesn't rely on production techniques. It's very much like the group trying to create that production out of the playing more than the production. So we had some difficulties with it, but really just agreeing how big to make it sound. And then later, Trevor and Jeff actually released it on the Buggles album. It was called Adventures in Modern Recording, the second record. And on there is a song called I Am a Camera, and it's the same song, without all the Yes fiddle faddles.
Hold On was written during the period when I was going to do a solo album, just before I met up with Chris. And the lyric was initially about the fact that, I went in to do something and I didn't want to do it, and I went into something else, and then I didn't want to do that, and I thought, well, God, I'm going to have to do something at some point, and And I did this thing, Hold On, you know, and then it evolved into something else. But that's where the Hold On started. Leave It was something which kind of there was no specific reason for why and how the lyrics happened like that. Chris and I just sat down and started writing lyrics, and we in fact went to. Chris and I basically wrote the song together. He wrote the bass line and I put the melody on top. And we went to record it and we couldn't get a drum sound at all. Just hopeless in the studio we were at. So we started doing vocals first and we said we'll put the drums on afterwards.
Leave It was one of the only songs Yes have ever done where they used basically in the studio a drum machine to create a track, and we hadn't done that for years and years and years, but Leave It was the first track that we ever used any synthetic drums on.
And so really, because the emphasis was not on getting the rhythm thing going, I just kind of started thinking of vocal arrangement wise.
I think Trevor and I did 96 harmonies each on that, or 96 tracks anyway.
I said to Chris, well, we should do this as a major a cappella type of thing, use the voices as instruments. And so that's what happened. We went to do the video for It Can Happen, and they put makeup on me, and I looked like Freddie Mercury from 1973. I mean, I looked like from Transylvania or something.
I remember doing the video for that. That was just after we started 901 to 5 tour, and I remember we had one day off before we played in New York, and we spent the whole night. I remember walking out of the video studio around 7 a.m. in the morning, you know, after having been there all night, spinning around in a box or something.
I actually wrote, this is going to sound silly, but I wrote the bass line of it, which is the key to the song, or the foundation of the song. I wrote the bass line when I was on the toilet. And I have a great sound in the toilet, and I always sing in the toilet. And it was a particularly long visit. And so I kind of wrote the bass line and then came up with the lyric on a Lonely Heart, and it just evolved from there.
It was the first time really major success had come to the band in a single top of the charts. You know, girls screaming and stuff like that, all at Trevor actually.
The idea of that is really just sex, you know, the rhythm of love, and I thought, you know, we've been cheeky enough with Yes by doing a song like I Never Lonely Heart, and pushing it from the kind of cosmic lyrics that we all know from John. I thought it would be a nice little tease and have a sex lyric in.
I think Trevor originally wrote this for Stevie Nicks. Or that was the plan.
Stevie Nicks wanted to do it. And so I finished it off, and she was really into doing it. She wanted to change some of the lyrics, and I said, fine. She changed them. She was about to do it. And when Alan heard it, Alan White, I was playing through tapes for the next album, and he said, we got to do that song.
Both Alan and I really liked the way it was, and so it went on the Big Generator album. And it's got lots of nice harmonies in it, and you know, it's a good folky tune.
And Stevie still gives me a hard time about it. She said, I still sing my lyrics when I hear that song, you know.
I remember I've seen other people playing it to a couple of people. Dell and her husband, they owned a house where Yes were rehearsing. And I remember one evening after dinner, we said to them, come and hear us play. So they were very excited, and they came in. And we went in a room that was, I suppose, about 9 by 7 that we'd set up in it was a titchy room, but somehow Yes had set up. Tony only had an organ, I had one amp, you know, it was very minimal. And we played, and they couldn't believe it. And I always think about that song from that perspective. We played it to some people out in private in a small room. It was quite fun.
It Can Happen. I wasn't on It Can Happen either. I mean, well, that one. Leave It. Was I on Leave It? I wasn't on Leave It, was I? I wasn't on Leave It. That's that gone. Was I on Hold On? No. That's good. I've seen All Good People. I wasn't on that either. I was on the live version on Yes songs, but I wasn't on that. Love Will Find a Way. I don't think I was on that, was I? I threw that all away. Yeah, you threw that all away. I wasn't on Love. Well, thanks a lot, Prox. You're still rattling your balls. Rhythm of Love. I wasn't on Rhythm of Love either. What a bloody waste of time this has been.
Simple smiles, the tiny flower, and we draw incomplete.
This is the same list you gave me yesterday.
It's the same list.
And you know what happened to the list yesterday, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
He's taken it away from me. I'll go and have a cup of tea. See you soon. Goodbye.